SMRT says the 3 train disruptions in the past 4 days are isolated and do not show a widespread issue with the rail system. It says it is working with the Land Transport Authority to take steps to address such incidents. Claudia Lim with more.
Morning peak hour commuters on the Thomson-East Coast line thought their journey would take an additional 15 minutes. Instead, some ended up waiting for hours, frustrated and struggling with a lack of information and direction, all because of a signal fault. SMRT acknowledges that there's room for better ground communication during such incidents. It says it knows that commuters could be impacted differently depending on which station they are at, and it is looking to work with LTA to improve in this area. It adds that it is working with the equipment manufacturer and LTA to investigate the fault, which required a system restart. The incident comes a day after another signalling fault hit the east-west line and 3 days after a train fault caused delays of 40 minutes along the north-south line. SMRT spoke to the media hours after Wednesday's incident to address the string of disruptions.
These are isolated cases, not systemic issues across the rail network. In each situation, our staff acted swiftly to prioritize commuter safety, deploy recovery measures, and provide free bus bridging services.
To strengthen rail reliability, Mr. Lam adds that SMRT will work closely with LTA in 3 key areas. First, a detailed assessment of rail assets, speeding up asset renewal and upgrading where needed. Second, technical audits of critical systems like power, signalling and track infrastructure. And when handling incidents, to take safety precautionary measures, which typically takes 2 to 3 hours.
We recognize the inconvenience these incidents cause and sincerely apologize to affected commuters. Without compromising safety, we will do our best to shorten the recovery time.
A pilot to improve crowd management measures started earlier this month. Mr. Lam adds that SMRT staff are now equipped with better tools to help guide passengers, particularly at major interchanges during peak periods.
Commuters in Singapore have experienced at least 18 major train disruptions since the start of this year. The top 3 causes are power faults, signalling faults and train faults, making up 3/4 of the disruptions. Among them were 5 power faults, including one that knocked out service on the North-East line across 11 stations for about 3 hours. It also crippled the entire Sengkang-Punggol LRT network for hours. There have also been 5 signalling faults, including the one that disrupted service along the east-west line for more than 5 hours. Train faults like braking and onboard signalling issues also accounted for 5 disruptions. Train faults hit the north-south line twice in September alone. And for more analysis, joining us now is Dr. Terence Fan, who is Assistant Professor of Strategy and Entrepreneurship at the Singapore Management University. Dr. Fan, great to have you with us. Now, first of all, the big question in everyone's minds, why could we be seeing so many major disruptions these past few months?
Thank you for inviting me. I'd very much like to direct back to the slide that you've just shown. So the causes of all these incidents, there are various, even if we kind of categorize them into different buckets. So from what I can read from the causes and investigations from the train operators, it does seem that all these incidents do have different underlying causes. Maybe some of them could be at some point due to the degradation of wires or cables for some of the faults. But still, these are very different things. So these are not sort of signaling some commonality at all. So what I would say is that a lot of these things do happen. For example, especially during the early phases when a new train line comes online, in the first place, and also once it's past its prime, sort of during, after much use of several decades. And at least for 2 of these lines, we're seeing faults. One is the east-west line, the oldest of all, and also the Thomson-East Coast line, one of the newest lines that we have. So we're kind of being very unlucky in that these two lines are in operation at the same time, and both do experience high frequencies of faults. But I don't see underlying issues per se. These are sort of semi-random things that happened to just bundle up, or bundle up at the same time. So that's unlucky, I guess, for us.
But do you also see that these disruptions suggest some gaps in maintenance, or also when it comes to signaling technology, perhaps?
Yeah, that's also a very good question, because whenever we have these disruptions, people will think, why can't the train operators spend more resources on these things? And I think we have to take a step back and sort of understand that all train operators operate with some constraints. So there's a limit on the kind of resources, the amount of resources, and the time that they have to access the tracks to actually fix or replace things. So I think we are kind of, up to a limit of sort, but we also have to realize that the train services that we're enjoying right now, they're operating at much higher frequency than many years ago when we only had two lines, for example. So with trains operating more often, obviously, the number of incidents, would also or disruptions may also, occur a little bit more frequently, just because the trains are actually being operated more often. So, for example, if we think back, 2 decades or several decades ago, when we only have two lines, trains were operating maybe 6-7 minutes, each service, and that's like twice the amount that we have right now. We have like trains down to 3 to 4 minutes, for much of the day. So what that means is that if we expect a certain number of disruptions per, let's say, 1,000 train operations, then we should be seeing today twice as frequent as, as we would in the past. So if we were used to having a 1 disruption every 6 months, now we should be seeing everything being equal once every 3 months, because simply we're operating trains much more frequently. And at the same time, we have not just 2 lines, we have 6 lines right now. So instead of once every 3 months, we obviously will expect rationally to see even more frequent disruptions as to once every 1 month, compared with once every 6 months before. So from the commuter's perspective, yes, we're having more frequent sort of disruption, but at the same time, we're operating the trains much more frequently, and there are much more lines to begin with. So I think we have to sort of understand from that perspective to say, okay, overall, the system might not actually have been that much worse than many years ago. I think that's sort of the baseline. Of course, some of these issues, as you alerted to, could be due to some degradation. For example, wires and cables. Nowadays, we see more extreme weather and so on. So it could be that some of the degradation happen a lot more quicker, and therefore certain replacements may be needed. But the thing is, with the constraint in terms of the maintenance hours, in terms of accessing the tracks, train operators often have to prioritize their work and say what will be the most likely to be at fault, and then work their way down in priorities. And I think a lot of the things that are happening are sort of just beneath the prioritized list of work. So it's a lot of things
Dr.
to
Fan,
be fixed.
thank you so much for sharing your insights
time.
with us, as always. Dr. Terence Fan, Assistant Professor of Strategy and Entrepreneurship at the Singapore Management University. Thank you for your insights.